After 2 hours of trekking through the swamp, you found it. The horror's lair. While scraping the mud from your boots, your senses pick up the faint scent of decay clinging to the persistent fog. A swift strike from steel on flint rekindles your torch, your best friend in a place as dark as this.
So a couple months ago, I filmed a YouTube short talking about an encounter that I designed for my 5e Monster Hunter campaign. If you've ever played The Witcher 3, then you know what a Foglet is. But for those of you who don't know, it's basically a super creepy and intelligent ghoulish type creature that utilizes fog to confuse and kill its prey. And it seemed like exactly the type of horror that I needed to torment the local swamp village in my campaign setting. Today I'm going to walk through this encounter from start to finish, and then at the end of the video, I'm going to share all of my notes with you so you can run the horror of Vitugatu at your own table. Let's get started. The hook for this quest is a pretty easy sell if your party has any interest in hunting and killing a dangerous monster. You should have the villagers tell of how this creature has been attacking travelers just off the side of the road outside of their village. The most recent attack had one survivor who claimed to have seen this creature dragging one of their colleagues screaming into the swamp. For extra effect, don't tell your players the true name of this creature. I mean, you and I, we know that this is a Foglet, but don't call it that in your game. Instead, refer to it as the horror of Vitugatu. You also don't have to use the name Vitugatu. That's just the name of this particular swamp in my world, but you could easily sub that in or use your own local swamp name. Whatever your local swamp is called. Just put that in there. And honestly, I made this name up because to me, it just sounds cool. But please, if you also like the name Vitugatu, by all means, use it. Now, since my players were all professional monster hunters, this was just the next quest on the job board, so they took it with ease. A reward of 2 1,000 gold piece diamonds from the local town's burgomaster is more than enough motivation to get your party to want to brave the swamp. Feel free to adjust that amount by whatever feels appropriate for your campaign setting, but for my group, which is about 6th to 10th level, it seemed appropriate. So let's talk a little bit more about the swamp. There's a couple bullet points I have here, and I'll probably put them up on the screen so you can read through and follow along. But the main points are that the entrance to the swamp should have plenty of warning signs and be pretty obvious that the area is dangerous. The way I utilize this in my campaign is I just had tons of signs along the route that says stay on the road. Of course, your party is going to be like, why should we stay on the road? As any curious party would. And then closer to the entrance, there should be a bunch of signs that say, keep out, danger, don't go in, enter at your own risk. Things like that to sort of warn travelers to not go this way. The next major point to consider is that the weather is always overcast. Very similar to how it is in Curse of Strahd, or if you live in the Pacific Northwest, it's almost always cloudy, particularly over the swamp area. Just always have it be cloudy and overcast, if not stormy and dark. This helps to increase the effect of the eeriness and make the fog that much more terrifying. Oh yeah, did I mention there's fog? Because, we're dealing with a Foglet, so it's gotta be fog in the swamp everywhere. Just lots of fog. The next point is the swamp is functionally a maze. So having a character in the group that is particularly skilled in intelligence and wisdom checks is gonna be your best friend when you're running through this adventure. And then the last major point of note that I would recommend ahead of time is to make sure that your players are fully prepared before they head for the swamp. Because once they're in there, they're in there. No time to go back for rations or antitoxins or whatever. So something else that makes this adventure really exciting and dangerous is the presence of a rather nefarious and common evil in the land. They're called the Kriv, and they're a terrifying and formidable undead corrupted by dark magic. These things are rough to deal with. But then again, so are 5e player characters. There's also a decent chance that your PUCs will run into some of them in the swamp, so let's have a look at their stat block really quick. So the Kriv, they have an armor class of 14, and their hit points are between 12 and 32, or you can just roll 4d8. I've also given them a speed of 40 because I wanted them to be the fast and terrifying kind of undead. They also have damage resistance to necrotic damage, as well as any damage from non-magical weapons that aren't silvered. I feel like this is an underutilized mechanic in 5e, and this felt like a great opportunity to enhance the whole silvered weapons have value narrative. Now, its Relentless Dead ability is my take on the Undead Fortitude ability of the zombie in the 5e monster manual, and basically if non-fire or radiant damage reduces the creature to 0 hit points, it'll fall prone and appear to be dead. Then on its next turn, the GM would roll a d4 in secret, and on a 1 or a 2, the Kriv Walker rises with 1 HP and acts on its turn. This is where you get some really cool moments where your party is trying to double tap zombies because they're not sure if they're actually dead or not, and it's definitely fun at the table. So the main attack does 1d10 plus 3 damage, and it says sword or axe there, but feel free to sub in any weapon that makes sense for you. Now, its second attack is its main scare factor. It does a bit less damage, but it has multi-attack, so it makes 2 strikes per action. Also, you'll see here that a creature must succeed on a DC 10 con save or have their maximum HP permanently reduced by 1d4 as the necrosis sets in. This is my tribute to the OSR undead, whom often had some sort of ability that permanently reduced max HP. And I think a mechanic like this is the best way to introduce true fear at your table. So several of the possible encounters in the swamp involve these formidable foes, so really make it clear to your players that these things are very powerful, very scary, and they won't necessarily come out unscathed. Let them know how dangerous they are. Don't just surprise them with a max hit point reduction when they start failing those con saves. All right, now we're going to talk about navigating the swamp. Once your party decides on a marching order and decides to enter the swamp, you're going to want to have at least one player, whoever's, the navigator of the group, make a DC 14 intelligence or wisdom check. I'm letting them do both. I know wisdom is perception, but in my book, it does take a decent level of intelligence to understand like where you are in terms of awareness. So if you have an intelligence focused player and not somebody who's got a good wisdom, you have an opportunity here for them to navigate successfully. And you're doing this check every 10 minutes. So keep track of how many successes they've had with the D4 and keep track of how many 10-minute intervals have gone by using a D20. This will become important later. Hopefully I haven't lost any of you at this point, but remember all of the notes for this are going to be in the description down below. So go snag a copy of it for yourself so you can refer back to it when you're actually running this adventure. Now the rule is for the swamp/maze is that part of keeping track of your successes and how much time has gone by is because after every successful check, you're going to roll for a random encounter, and also after every 30 minutes, so that would be every 3 turns of the D20, you're going to roll for a random encounter. And the reason it's so important to keep track of the successful navigation checks is once you've reached 4 successes, you're going to add +4 to all of the D12 random encounter rolls, which we're going to take a look at right now. I wrote up each one of these. It's a D12 roll, and you'll notice that the first 4 are pretty rough encounters. 2d6 Kriv, rise from the muck and attack. The fog thickens and you lose all of your successful navigation rolls. The muddy water you trudge through becomes troublesome to move through. All must make a DC 10 con save or take 1 point of exhaustion. Something moved beneath the muck. The PC at the back of the marching order must succeed in a DC 14 con save or take 1d4 poison damage for 1d4 rounds and are poisoned for 1 hour. Yeah, these are rough things. Pretty scary. So when you have 4 successes and you're getting a +4, the lowest roll in a D12 will be a 1, which means the worst roll you can get is a 5 here. And this is meant to sort of imitate that you are successfully navigating through the swamp. Because at the end here, you'll see that there's a 13+. You can't actually roll a 13 on a D12 dice, but with the +4, you can actually reach a 13+, which is how you actually succeed on navigating the swamp. By setting up the system this way, you're actually ensuring you get to have some random encounters during the swamp, and it sort of imitates that exploration factor of going through a swampy maze. So your players have been navigating through the swamp, and they finally got that elusive 13+, and subsequently found the horror's lair. Well, they got to go in to do what they came here for. So let's talk about what the horror's lair looks like. It's pretty straightforward. Circular cave, roof's about 20 feet high. It's filled with rocks and boulders of various shapes and sizes. It's dark. Really dark. So the Foglet should definitely be using that to its advantage. Now, the way I designed the lair is that there are 2 entrances. There's the front main entrance, which is going to basically be the most inviting entryway for your players. But if you have a savvy group of players that are like, maybe we should check and see if there's another way inside rather than just walking in through the front door, there is in fact another back door entrance. If the players wanted to scout it out, I would give them some sort of hint that they are able to find something along that way. Depending on what they're asking, that's where your GM magic comes in. Maybe they're looking for tracks and they roll particularly high survival check. Sure, I'll reveal that there are some tracks there because this Foglet is probably coming and going, and it's not necessarily just using its front door all the time. This is its lair. It knows it like the back of its hand. So once initiative is rolled, the battle with the Foglet is fairly straightforward. Make sure to use its death fog ability as often as it's available. You do have to roll to recharge it, so You could just have bad luck and not utilize it, but always try to use it. That's literally its best ability, and that's how this creature has earned a name for itself. I would also recommend that every turn that you can, use your bonus action to hide within the fog, because you got to take advantage of that mist form ability. It literally gets advantage to hide while in fog, so use it. Now the Foglet can cast Mirror Image at will, but I don't recommend you use it unless your party is particularly powerful. That just makes this encounter way harder. Now the only mechanic on this stat block that might be confusing is the poison timer. It deals 1d4 damage for 1d4 rounds. It's kind of like a damage over time, or if you ever play video games and they call it a dot ability. It's meant to sort of emulate that kind of a system. So for example, the Foglet hits you with its claw and you take 2d6 plus 4 slashing damage and 1d4 poison damage. Then the GM rolls a d4 and gets a 3. The Foglet goes for another attack and hits you with another 2d6 plus 4 slashing damage and 1d4 poison damage. Then the GM rolls a d4 again and gets a 4, which is added to the previous poison damage timer for a total of 7. At the beginning of your next turn, you take 1d4 poison damage and the timer ticks down from a 7 to 6. You can see how this creature is extremely dangerous and a horror indeed. So you can find all my notes, my random encounter table, and the monster stat blocks for free in the description down below. So go ahead and snag a copy for yourself. After you do that, if you want to watch more House DM encounter design, I recommend you watch this video next, and thanks for watching. Bye.